All right, this is David Avocado Wolfe, and I'm here with my friend David Wilcock. And David, tell us a little bit about how you just created an internet storm with that video that went out there. Tell us a little bit about the thinking that went behind it, and if those folks who are listening right now or watching don't know about it, if they can find it, what is it called?
It's called 2012 Enigma. It was the #1 most viewed video on Google December 1st last year. The premise is this. There's a lot of things happening in the world right now. You have ETs visiting us, more and more cosmic experiences people are having in their daily lives. You're also seeing Earth changes. You're seeing too much water, not enough water. And all sorts of things like this are happening, not just on Earth, but throughout the solar system.
More storms on planets, and things are heating up.
Yeah, we call it interplanetary climate change. And so that's the real smoking gun that shows us that 2012 is not simply another year. It's actually a significant event, which involves the transformation of the human spirit to a higher evolution. Now, I have all the evidence that shows DNA actually can be transmuted from one species to another, and that energetic process has driven fossil evolution on Earth in these million-year cycles of time, 62 million-year cycles and 26 million-year cycles.
So that's related to pulse waves that come from the center of the galaxy?
Correct.
Who was that guy who had that book on that subject?
Paul LaViolette.
What an amazing book he put out there. And maybe you could tell a little bit about that side of things, because all we get is like creationism, evolution, and we don't really understand what DNA is, because we're saying that 97% of it's junk.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the energy that's around us right now while we're talking, while you're watching this video, is actually DNA forming. Life is something that forms everywhere it can. One of the guys who discovered the DNA molecule proved that 99.9% of all the dust in the galaxy gives off the same light signature as bacteria in space.
Wow.
So everything is alive, and the DNA wave is built by the galaxy, which has got its own consciousness, its own intelligence. And so, although this sounds more esoteric than some people are ready to accept, the universe, when it was first created, the galaxies were the primordial beings.
Okay.
And they set up a system of rules of how life would evolve on every planet in their galaxy. Our galaxy created a human template. That's why all the visitors are human-looking in some form or another.
Okay.
And so we are actually going to be welcoming, and that's one of the things I was told in the dream the other night, was that your group is going to help welcome a lot of these visitors in as this shift comes into being. Now, of course, I have a lot of scientific information that backs up all this stuff, too. You can look, for example, at DNA in a laboratory and see that the DNA takes all the light around itself and spirals it. And the light actually travels in a corkscrew. Then you take the DNA out of the tube, and the corkscrew continues happening with all the light.
It's still there.
You can blast it with liquid nitrogen, it goes away for 6 or 7 minutes, and then it comes back. And it'll stay there for 30 days.
Is it the water that's carrying it? What is it? Is it imprinted into the fabric of reality?
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting you mentioned water. I think you're tuning into it, because the fabric of reality itself is fluid-like.
Okay.
There is this substrate, or this super reality that all matter comes from. We can't normally interface with it, but it is all based on vibration, and that's why things like toning, things like color, things like geometry actually entrain the field and create resonance with the field.
And drumming, you said.
Yes, drumming.
And drumming has a lot to do with shamanism, obviously, but I really enjoyed your thoughts on that the other day when we were talking about that. Can you describe that again? Like, drumming entrains that flow.
Right. The field is existing through everything. So the field exists in oxygen. The field exists in the air. So even the rhythm of breathing, the rhythm of meditative breathing, creates, if you create a pulse, then what you're doing is you're creating a resonance in the field, which allows energy to bleed in from the hyper-reality, which you will then experience in your conscious mind. Everybody thinks they're looking for something outside themselves. They think, oh, I'm not psychic. Well, no. The point is, everybody's mind is the universal mind. If you get clear enough, what comes into your mind is going to be thoughts from the field directly. So when you're drumming, you get that repetitive pulse, which allows information to come in from the field, which you'll then experience in real time. Some people have visions, some people have downloads, some people have trance states. Depends on the person, but you're going to have a real experience with this higher consciousness.
In our community, we call that the 0-point energy, right? That's the ether, the 0-point energy, the flow, and we have all different kinds of words to describe, like, the super reality, essentially, the super flowing reality that's around us. It encourages, and imbibes all energy bodies. It's basically the Force from Star Wars days. Tell us a little bit about Star Wars. Where's that all come from?
Well,
what are your thoughts on that? Because David, by the way, David's 37, I'm 39. We grew up in the Star Wars age, probably like you watching right now. Some thoughts on Star Wars?
Of course, we know that Joseph Campbell wrote the book The Hero's Journey, and that George Lucas was a big scholar of Campbell, and so he put all the Campbell Hero's Journey stuff into Star Wars. Originally, the hero was supposed to be Luke Skywalker, and then when the movie did so well, he rewrote the script and made it into Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And Darth Vader was now this guy involved in a story that took a lot longer to resolve, and that's how you got the last two movies, and then he wrote the prequels. The hero's journey is very fascinating because that is the story that I was telling you about before of the galaxy. So the reason why Star Wars is such an effective movie series is that it is telling us the story of every human spirit. We all are Darth Vader. We all go through this fall from grace and a descent into negativity. And I know your community really focuses on diet, and that's a great thing. If you can discipline yourself to kind of rise above the thought forms of fear and depravity and scarcity consciousness that's so prevalent in this world, and be able to embrace the vitality of living foods. I mean, the Star Wars paradigm is, of course, the Force, the Jedi. And your people are part of that Jedi. You're part of that new energy. And if you want to have the abilities that Luke Skywalker was developing, you have to eat for an energy body. You can't just feed the physical body.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because eating for the energy body, one of the things that I really enjoyed the other day was this whole thing about microclusters.
Yeah.
You're telling us about microclusters. I was doing my whole rap on Ormus and that kind of stuff, and David was watching. And then afterwards he said, well, what about microclusters? Let's talk a little bit about that, and then what that does to our light body and feeding our light body.
Absolutely. As you probably know, I know you know because we talked about this, the ancients had this thing they called mifkazit, which means what is it? It was the philosopher's stone in alchemy. It's this whole idea of a compound that you would eat. The Egyptians would go on a 40-day fast where they have nothing but white powder gold.
Yeah. And
then after 40 days, you basically have ascended ability. So what's the real science behind this? Well, it's been called Ormus, O-R-M-E-S, Orbitally Rearranged Monatomic Elements, by David Hudson. And he did some very strange stuff. He took microcluster iridium, which is monatomic, and he heats it to 850 degrees Celsius, at which point it goes invisible and it loses all its mass. But then when you cool down the area of space where it was, it actually comes back.
Yep. So it's going into another dimension of some sort.
Right. The temperature is a vibration, and the vibration takes that sacred geometry that's in the gold and makes it pop into a higher frequency. Now, that's the sacred geometry part. Let me get into that, because that's the basis of your question.
Yep.
I found a book from Springer Verlag. It's a college textbook called Microcluster Physics. It's by Sugano and Koizumi, two Japanese scientists.
Okay.
What they've done is they've found a new state of matter. Normally what we do is we look at fine particles, and then it immediately goes up to bulk, and it's not believed that there's any sort of
in between.
Right, organization down there at the level of only like a few hundred atoms or something. But what they actually found was that if they shoot atoms through a little nozzle, one atom at a time, it's called an adiabatic expansion. The atoms don't just spit out. They end up wanting to gather together, and they form these beautiful platonic solid geometries. Icosahedron, dodecahedron, cuboctahedron, square, the cube rather.
These are platonic shapes. For those of us who are watching right now going, what in the world is that? It's a shape, right? So, for example,
a soccer ball.
Like a soccer ball has, there's different 5 pentagons on it, or what is a soccer ball? Is it 5 or 6?
12 pentagons, 5-sided object per pentagon. So the point is that these geometries are really like the core of how the field expresses itself into matter. They are matter-forming energies, and that's why atoms and molecules, when they are allowed to, there's these natural forces that push them together into that shape.
Into those shapes, right.
But what happens is when we drink water that hasn't been properly clustered, we're not getting that geometry. If you notice with all the Masaru Emoto work on water, you have people meditate on water, and then what happens?
Changes geometry.
He looks at it under a microscope, and as it unfreezes and then refreezes, it forms these beautiful crystals. Well, that's because the water has now taken on all those platonic solid shapes because it interfaces with consciousness. Consciousness creates that field that makes that geometry, right? So what happens in the case of microclusters, first of all, the material science text focuses on the really weird, peculiar properties of microclusters, okay? you have individual atoms that have now gathered together into this nice sacred geometry. And instead of the electrons, which are not even really electrons, it's a wave.
Well, they're not. It's not matter, right? It's a wave function.
It's a wave function. Instead of the electrons orbiting the center of each nucleus in the cluster, it actually orbits the center of the cluster. And they don't have any way to explain that because it totally defeats the particle model of physics.
Right.
You can't have particles doing that, and that's what they do. So what we do know is that these microclusters have very unusual physical properties. They're very highly conductive. They're very highly insulative, depending on how you use them. And we know that this is the core of what makes food nutritious. The more microclusters are in your diet, the more nutrition you get. But more importantly, when you ingest these microclusters, you're also ingesting vitality, which feeds the energy body. So most people's diet is so devoid of microclusters. They're not getting in the water, they're not getting in the food.
Yep.
Because if you're growing things on nitrogen, potassium, sodium, the NPK, like in Miracle-Gro, 15, 30, 15.
Yep.
Yeah, you can give plants just those three things and they'll grow okay, but you're losing all the trace minerals and all the other stuff.
So all those trace minerals, the Ormus elements, form like microclusters, right?
They form sacred geometry on a molecular level. And that sacred geometry actually feeds your energy body, which you don't even normally know you have. But you can tell when somebody has a really weak energy body because their skin goes bad and they crunch in, they lean forward. And
they lose their symmetry, they lose their levity, essentially.
Right.
So the Egyptians were onto this whole thing about feeding the light body.
Right.
Now, we had a talk yesterday about that the light body actually exists. It's
absolutely.
Right, and then we've got to feed it, and we feed it through microclustering. Now, the way I've approached that is always wild foods, especially really high-powered wild foods. Like yesterday, we had some of the saguaro cactus fruit.
I remember that. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, you were like, this has microclusters in it, right? You could just feel it. And that kind of a thing. Is there any other ideas that come in from this research that might be of benefit to our viewers out there who are interested in diet so much, and water and fresh air?
Well, here's another thing that's really important, and that is that you can change the structure of your own food by intent. Remember that this is an intent-based energy. And so that's why it's so important to bless your food, because you can take the existing stuff that you're already using and make it much more potent by making it yours, by putting your energy into it. I would say that there are another one of the wonderful gifts is that nature has given us everything we need to be healthy. There's a natural pharmacopoeia, and that pharmacopoeia is an encyclopedia of knowledge. And so I would recommend, if anybody watching this video doesn't already know about David's work, you showed an incredible knowledge of natural supplements and things that would work for the body. And I would wager that a lot of those supplements have very unique microclustered elements in them.
I would bet
feeding
you're
the
right.
energy body.
Yeah, like fulvic acid definitely is one of those. Because its nature is, we were talking about snowflakes and the layering of snowflakes to form a snowbank, for example. Well, that's what fulvic acid really is. It's just carbon formations on top of each other that are residues of life forms that are essentially they're interspersed with bacteria when they're first laid down as sediment, and what's excreted into that fulvic acid sediment is actually probably microclusters of certain types of atoms, and probably high spin atoms like Ormus elements. So we're now finding that actually this sacred geometry, this is a big thing. We'll close on this because this was a fascinating subject we got into, was about sacred geometry and these platonic solids. As they fold outward and become bigger, as they grow, this generates spin, but then they become more complex platonic solids.
Right.
So maybe we can talk about that, about pole shifts, because this, I mean, we've known that the Earth is growing. We've known that there's something going on with these platonic solids, but I think you put a piece in there that I had never heard before, which is, okay, we're going to be upgrading to the next higher octave platonic solid.
That's true. The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, NOAA, had a paper written in 1976 by Dr. Athelstan Spilhaus, S-P-I-L-H-A-U-S. I have not been able to actually find the original paper, but it was referenced by Joseph Jockmans in an article called Earth as a Crystal Planet. Okay, and I found that book in another book by David Hatcher Childress called Anti-Gravity in the World Grid.
Oh, yeah. David Hatcher Childress is right up over here near Sedona, actually.
Okay. So basically, Spilhaus looked at the original layout of the continents in what they call, it became Gondwana land. It was originally called Pangaea.
Yeah.
And he found that when you look at the way Pangaea breaks up, that it breaks up along equidistant lines. And he pulled to connect the dots of those equidistant lines and says, oh my God, it's a tetrahedron.
Whoa.
Which is a four-sided pyramid that has a triangle on the base rather than a square like in Egypt, but it's a little pyramid. Then he looks at, as Gondwanaland continues unfolding, and he discovers, my gosh, the next round is a cube octahedron, which is basically a combination of an octahedron, which is two Egyptian pyramids base to base, and a cube. So then he also found out that our current phase of development is a icosahedron, which is, again, this five-sided pentagon thing, where there's 12 faces on the pentagon.
So it's icosahedron.
Right. It's
so
both of them together.
You can Google that one, and actually Wikipedia it, and you can see what that structure looks like.
There's books on my website, divinecosmos.com, where I've written about this called Convergence. All 3 volumes have the geometry in them. Anyway, what we now know is that, this is what I discovered, basically, that each phase of the Earth's expansion is a platonic solid, and that's what determines the magnetic field and the energy fields going through the Earth. Yeah, and the pole, right, the rotational axis. When you shift from one platonic to another, it needs to make an angular tilt to preserve its axis.
Right.
So in other words, when the Earth shifts to a higher geometric frequency, which is just vibration, there does need to be a little bit of a tug on the poles.
Do you think that could happen in 2012, or do you think we're millions of years away from the next change in the poles?
It could, but again, the people who are all doom and gloom and thinking this is a big cataclysm have totally lost the point of this. Because you look through the fossil record and you see that when the solar system charges up like this, when you're getting interplanetary climate change, you're getting DNA activation. We know that humanity is now, it's in a supercharged period of evolutionary change. In the last 5,000 years, evolution is moving 100 times faster than before.
Wow.
That's proven by John Hawkes, a University of Wisconsin anthropologist. So we know that we're in a time where the species of humanity is evolving. And if you can vibe into the idea that the galaxy is an intelligent super being that created all human life on any planet that it exists, it's quite crass to think that the galaxy would just tell us in advance, oh, you're all going to die in 2012.
Yeah.
That's not
ridiculous.
The point. The point is prepare yourself, because something is happening, something is shifting, something is changing. And what's changing is each person on an individual level choosing whether they're going to go into love or whether they're going to go into fear. And one of the things I really like about your message, David, is how much you focus on the love and you dispel the fear. And you're also helping people tune up their diet so that they're chemically able to be in love rather than fear.
Yeah, I kind of say it's stacking the odds in your favor.
Yeah.
Because diet is a tool that helps you stack the odds in your favor, so it's easier to hold a higher vibration energy, it's easier to hold that love energy, and it's easier to keep the fear off of you.
Right.
So, that's kind of the core of the whole dietary message, which is ultimately what heals you, I think. That's my experience. Anyway, we've gone well over your time. We got to get into a closing ceremony. This is David Wilcock, divinecosmos.com.
You got it.
divinecosmos.com. Check it out. He had the biggest video on Google, December 1st, 2008, 2012 Enigma. Also watch that and many of his other very informative videos. This is David Avocado Wolfe signing off. Have the best day ever.
Thank you.